Welcome back to Notes from the Crucible. This time, we're going to talk about yet two more topics that you will seldom find in management textbooks.
Yeah. I thought hard before writing both of these, but because they're not dealt with anywhere else, I felt kind of compelled to deal with it. So evil and good, the ages-old conflict that in modern times has been reduced to sort of a question of illness and therapy. But I have to say, as a seasoned leader, 30 years as CEO, 40 years in senior leadership, there are moments, they're not frequent, there are moments when evil has to be dealt with. Profound, malevolent, sick, broken, twisted, bent, there are all kinds of words for it. Most of the time, the problems I had to confront were problems of weakness, problems of disagreement, problems of misalignment. There's all sorts of nice language for that. Those are ordinary, and those require technical solutions mostly. But you may, at some point in your leadership life, confront at a personal or a systemic level something that really is evil. I know a lot of people don't believe evil exists. I watch the news and I think, how can you not? Ask a child in Sudan or ask someone in Lebanon right now. Ask a pastor in Ukraine.
Yeah.
There are, I think, when we choose not to believe in evil, we're really being deeply unrealistic about human capacity for wickedness. So I would say perhaps 2 or 3 times in my life, the course of my leadership, I had to confront truly evil, deeply wicked people and deal with it. And once or twice, malevolent systems that were bent on destruction of good things and good people. How do you do that? Well, it takes a different set of resources for doing that. The first thing to know about that is that you can't negotiate with evil. You have to understand that evil is about domination, and evil people are about domination. When you negotiate with them, they co-opt you. There's a great line that's quoted in the book and under the title chapter from Paradise Lost. Milton understood evil better than many, and in Paradise Lost, in many ways, Satan's the most interesting character. Satan says early in the giant poem, better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven. Evil's a choice. Evil is fundamentally, deeply self-centered. I am the king, and everyone else is nothing.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with it? Well, you'll get to discuss that after you read the chapter. The core of it is not negotiating with evil, not hoping it away, but at some time, if you know you have to deal with it, to do so wisely, which means with many counselors, and to deal with it without compromise. In the end, if you're really dealing with evil, it can only be banished. It can't be corrected.
Mm.
The correction of evil is somebody else's job. Your protection of your organization and the community of work and your own soul requires you to banish it. In my faith tradition, Jesus never healed a demon.
Yeah. Cast
them out, banished them, healed all manner of illness, but banished evil. The flip side of this is doing good. I want to use the word ethics for a minute because doing good in most of our organizations isn't a conversation we have. We want to behave with integrity. We want to have transparency. We want to behave ethically. And the problem is that in modern times, as litigious as they are, ethics has sort of resolved itself to the lowest common denominator, which is do no harm.
Right.
Or worse, don't get caught doing any harm. Or worst of all, don't get caught and culpable of doing any harm. So a better word than ethics that I hope we'll begin to use again in our organizational life is the language of virtue. Virtue is about achieving all you can morally. It's about doing all the good you can. And I think the moral weakness, the virtue weakness of our organizations of all kinds, for-profit and not-for-profit, is that they've stopped asking the question, are we doing all the good we can do? So that's the conversation in the second essay. And there are ways to think about doing more good and pushing yourself to do more good and asking yourself, are we doing all the good we can do? And hearing from people who will have a different judgment of that than you might. The last two chapters in the book are the strangest, but they're going to deal with things that are so ultimately human.
Right. So what kind of questions can people ask as they discuss this amongst themselves?
So I think the first is, how do you know when you're dealing with evil? Have you ever had the experience? How did you know you're not dealing just with someone who's goofy or unbalanced or strange or just different, an enemy, but actually an evil enemy? That's different. So how do you know? And who would you go to when confronted with that? I think of that now in our country, where there are lots of strange things happening in our politics, and we've gotten pushed so far to the right and left from each other that people are too quick to name the other's failing as moral. You're not just wrong, you're evil.
Yeah.
I think you have to be very, very careful in naming evil. And I think it's a sin to misname someone evil. But it's also a huge mistake to treat genuine wickedness, genuine evil, as just being misguided.
Right.
You know, Plato thought there was no such thing as evil. He thought there was just a lack of education. Both his great student Aristotle said, "Foolish man, you've not been out in the world. So you're going to run into evil." I think more often in our organizational life, you're likely to run into it as a broken system, a corrupt process, a government environment, for example, that encourages corruption and misuse of power and profiteering and things like that. Those things are going to happen, and they take a collective action. But somebody's got to act. I was reading this morning about the cost of goods in one of the many war zones we have, and all the aid that's flowing to that zone, and how the prices go from $2.50 a kilo for rice to now $120 by the time it gets to the hungry parents and children. That's a corrupt, evil, wicked system that needs to be confronted. So we're going to deal with them. Ask questions about how you know, whose help do you need, and how do we banish this? How do we get this out of the system? And on the other side, ask questions about, are you today doing all? If your organization had no impediments, what would you really like to achieve? What's the problem out there you're really trying to achieve? If your mission statement is about your identity, we want to be the premier XYZ. We want to be the best, manufacturer of widgets in the East Coast. That's not doing all the good you can do. You need to think in terms of impact, both on those you serve and on those who serve with you.
Right.
And that's who you should be communicating with. The people you serve should have a great voice in helping you discern, are we doing all the good we can do?